continue our review of Ascendance of a Bookworm, Ships, and Couples. In part 1, we covered Mine's friends, family, and associates from the lower city. In this video, I will cover Ehrenfest Nobility, which includes Rosamund's family, adopted family, retainers, as well as a few crack ships that are surprisingly popular in the fandom. Again, I made this video in collaboration with a whole bunch of bookworms from my Discord server. If you're interested in taking part in similar discussions in the future, join me at the Nest by becoming a Ko-fi member. So let's do this. Ascendance of a Bookworm, Ships and Couples, Ehrenfest Nobility. We start off this list with one of Bookworm's most popular couples. And it's not just that they're popular, but Carson and Elvira, Rosamund's noble parents, were the first husband and wife duo that we were presented to, and it was almost as if understanding their relationship was meant to give us insight on Ehrenfest noble culture, or noble culture in general. Jürgenschmidt nobles can, and often do, take multiple spouses, though it is more likely for men to take multiple wives than for women to take multiple husbands. In fact, for some people it is expected because of political reasons. Such was the case for Carsten. To better understand the marriage of Carsten and Elvira, we had to go way back to when Carsten was still Ehrenfest's only male Archduke candidate. However, with the birth of Sylvester, he was demoted from Archduke candidate to Archnoble. Thanks a lot, Veronica. And speaking of Veronica, once her power was cemented with Sylvester's birth and Carsten's demotion, the lazy gangs were desperate for a way to keep her in check. Therefore, upon his demotion, Carsten was engaged to Elvira, who then formed an anti-Veronica faction. In my estimation, Elvira was the best of wives and the best of women, and Carsten should have thanked his lucky stars that he got to marry her. But for whatever reason, he was very unhappy with the arrangement, and even had the audacity to say so to Elvira's older brother. Now, before you go off bashing Carsten, I know you're tempted, I'm tempted, but let's remember that this all took place while he was still in the Royal Academy. He had just been freshly demoted, so he was probably having a really hard time coping with this new reality. He was basically had to start from scratch, and he was engaged at this point to Elvira because of political reasons and such, you know. But Elvira, it was a political marriage. It was a political marriage, but Elvira kind of said something to him because she knew that he was probably struggling with the situation of like his world suddenly turning upside down. And she was like, yeah, I'll do my best to not, you know, not burden you. But he took it as like, yeah, I cannot rely on you. So that's yeah. So he was like, oh, so I see now that she knows that I am now demoted Archnoble, she sees me as like somebody she doesn't really care to like rely on, like, so there was like this, and this was during their student days too, so they were just like being dumb. Thankfully, that explains it. Communication. Yes, thankfully, Hersher eventually manages to leave Ehrenfest and become a teacher. And she is now able to like lay it out, like, okay, I'm gonna be level with you, Carsten. You are behaving so badly with Elvira. So she's the one that fixed that disastrous relationship because it was so bad with them. But yeah, so that was like the beginnings. And then, of course, we have Elvira. It got worse because of the three wives. Yeah.
The Veronica faction still had the higher power. Lady Veronica was purposely trying to intervene and trying to add more of her support base into those connected with the rest of the Archducal family. Carsten, being the Knight Commander, is like, okay, I want you to pair this person paired with your son, and Elvira had to deal with that all on her own, while Carsten was with Sylvester and with the Knight's Order.
To add insult to injury, Carson himself admitted that when it came to his family and his job always took priority. Therefore, he often left all of the familial squabbles to Elvira. And so, as the wife of the Knight's Order commander, she had to continually put on a strong front, even in front of her own husband, and not show an inch of weakness. And here is where Carson gets insufferable, and you're welcome to bash him. He actually resented her coldness and just how uncute she was.
Magpi, if you remember, his first two marriages, first one, Elvira, is a arranged marriage. Second one, arranged marriage by Veronica, which makes it even worse for him. And the third one was his own marriage because he loved her.
Yeah, he liked her.
Obviously, immediately he had a bias towards her compared to the other two. Rosemary did not help the situation. Made the whole thing worse because Elvira had to pick a side because Carson picked a side and she had to support this other wife because or else it would be an injustice. The second wife would feel left out. Blah, blah, blah. Basically, this is all Carson's fault. When you have multiple wives, don't pick a favorite.
Hence why the strain was so bad. But then Rosemine came along. Veronica fell out of power and was put in the ivory tower, which eased some of the strain. And then it did lead up to how they both were going to raise Rosemine, be it for a short period of time, but it helped their relationship mend after so long.
They got married, but Blossom never visited them until much, much later.
And basically, their relationship got so cute and good that even Cornelius, Ard, and Lamprecht noticed that the relationship was getting better.
A fan favorite scene is when Rosamine is praising Elvira to the skies to Carson, and he is flabbergasted and even confused. Carson asks her if Rosamine doesn't find Elvira to be lacking in tenderness and femininity, only for Rosamine to reply that Elvira is exactly the kind of wife a Knight's Order commander needs as his first wife, because she has to be strong enough to protect his house while he is absent for work. After those eye-opening statements, Carson begins to realize that he'd always been dissatisfied that Elvira never relied on him or acted vulnerable when he was around, and finally realized why she was like that in the first place. From then on, he began to respect her a lot more and even admire her once he realizes that the real Elvira has a much sunnier attitude and is actually really, really cute, especially when she's excited about a certain Harshpil concert. We also get to see how the relationship has improved once they go to visit Elvira's home province.
The way Elvira was flustered when Rosamine just publicly announced Carson praising her behind her back.
They were so cute.
And finally, in an untranslated side story from one of the Bookworm CDs, we get Carson and Elvira share a tender private moment when he breaks the news to her that Rosamine must leave for the sovereignty. And at last, after so many years of marriage, Elvira breaks down and cries in front of Carson, leaning on him for support in a way she'd never allowed herself to do before.
We love them. They have worked their way through. Sometimes the ship starts sailing really rough and choppy waters, but once the sun comes out, it's all smooth sailing. And this ship has weathered the storms. So
yeah, would that make Rosemine the sun then?
Yeah, it makes the sun.
Here comes the sun.
Stop it! Don't make me sing. Oh, for the love of Pete,
We'll be enjoying start singing.
As bookworms, there are very few things that bring us more glee than to talk about our beloved airhead Angelica. So I'm gonna leave it to the rest of the gang to cover the Ard and Angelica ship.
Okay. Now, let's all talk about how perfect they are for each other. Ard doesn't really care who he marries as long as he can still serve his master. And same for Angelica. I don't see a reason why they shouldn't be together.
Perfect couple.
Yeah, they're the power couple.
They're the power couple. And also, Angelica just wants someone that's stronger than her. And I'm pretty sure Ard fits that category.
For sure.
Yeah, because I believe Angelica is a med noble.
She's a med noble that has arch noble amount of mana.
Because of Rosemine's compression method.
Yeah.
Bonifacius wanted Angelica to marry into the family. Originally, that was going to be Traugott until he shamed himself so bad. So then they were kind of at a loss because Bonnie would, had he not been so high up in age. And then came along the option for Eckhart because, again, neither of them really want to get married, so they could postpone it for as long as possible. Partly because Eckhart was still hurt about his wife and child passing. And Angelica, our lovable airhead, doesn't really care too much. But they both have extreme dedication to their charges.
It must be pointed out, however, that before Eckhart and Angelica were a thing, long ago there had been 𝙏𝙗𝙗, Eckhart's one and only love who died tragically with their baby.
Oh, poor Eckhart.
Ah.
So 𝙏𝙗𝙗, he was married to 𝙏𝙗𝙗, and she ended up dying with child. And basically Eckhart now wanted to go to the towering up the towering staircase with them, but Ferdinand ordered him not to. So yeah, this is kind of like a touchy subject about him, and he basically, that's why he doesn't want to get remarried again for love. Yeah,
his backstory is so heartbreaking.
Despite his painful past, Eckhart is open to making Angelica his second wife. However, it's not because he has moved on and has fallen deeply for her. No, it's because they just happen to suit each other well. There are many fan favorite scenes featuring these two. Eckhart and Angelica first started training together after Ferdinand tricked Angelica into abandoning Rosamine.
Angelica listened to Ferdinand to go train with Eckhart?
Yes.
They're training buddies.
Yes.
You can't separate them.
Bonding through fighting.
Exactly.
During that time, Angelica realized that she had so much to learn from Eckhart, who was incredibly strong, and that was the start of her admiration for him. As for Eckhart, that was when he first learned that Angelica did not have a single romantic thought in her head and cared very little about marriage, and in fact wished to postpone it as much as possible. Another fan favorite scene is Angelica's graduation when Eckhart came to the Royal Academy to be her escort, indicating that they were to be engaged. Angelica's parents are also around, and when they hear what Angelica has to say about Eckhart, that he could be anyone for all she cared, so long as she could continue to serve Rosamine, they were shocked and horrified at her disrespectful statement. But Eckhart is unperturbed and doesn't even take offense at what she said, because he himself is only marrying her for his own selfish reasons, which is to get Elvira off his back. So win-win. Everything was going absolutely great for these two, until Ferdinand received an order from the Zend that he had to marry into Arensbach, and as his loyal retainer, Eckhart was going to follow him as well, and even invited Angelica to go with him, and become a valuable member of their party since she was so good at fighting and obeyed orders without question. However, when he proposed it to Angelica, she chose to remain with Rosamine, even if it meant cancelling her engagement, which would actually ruin her reputation as a woman, thus showing the extent of her devotion and loyalty to her mistress.
Which Eckhart completely respects.
Because they both went their ways to serve their lord, which is what they both value most. Their respect for each other is probably even higher now than before.
Thankfully, their separation was not permanent. One of the many happy consequences of Rosamine having to go and rescue Ferdinand in Arensbach and stealing the foundation for herself is that because both the respective masters might end up together, or at least we hope so, Eckhart and Angelica will continue to pursue their passions together, working side by side as they serve their individual masters.
So it's like there could be genuine love on top of, like before when it was just an arranged marriage.
This is why they're such a perfect couple.
Things are looking up for this battleship, wishing it smooth sailing from here on out. Since we're talking about the Linkberg family, we might as well talk about an often overlooked couple, Lamprecht and Aurelia. While at the Royal Academy, Lamprecht, who served Wilfrid, obediently sought out at Veronica's instruction a good Arensbach noblewoman to marry and bring to Ehrenfest. Meanwhile, Aurelia was desperate to leave Arensback and her controlling father behind, so when Lamprecht brought up marriage, she fairly jumped at the chance. However, her father did not give them permission to marry, and they were forced to go their separate ways. Thankfully, though, Georgine actually saved this ship from sinking. Aurelia had proved herself to be shy and obedient, and she was sent to Ehrenfest as a bride, but also as a spy. After all, she had managed to form a connection to Lamprecht, who was not only closely tied to the Archducal family as Wilfrid's retainer, but also being related to the Knights Order commander and the leader of the opposing faction, made this marriage desirable for Arensback, that is, Georgine. Unfortunately for Georgine and for Aurelius's father, Aurelia never ever played along with their scheme and in fact distanced herself as much as she could from the Veronicans. It takes some time for Bookworm fans to really warm up to this ship. First because it's Lamprecht, and second because Aurelia always walks around hiding her face behind a veil. She is so insistent on this that it's almost off-putting until we realize the reason why she has to hide her face in the first place. Despite the fact that she has a fierce look and that she resembles the hated Lady Gabrielle, Lamprecht finds her adorable, and in a short story featuring Aurelia, we get to see them be cute and lovey-dovey, going so far as to hide her under his cape when he lifts her veil to give her a kiss on the cheek. And this is where Lamprecht, who is so often overlooked, shines. He doesn't force Aurelia to pick a side, whether Veronican or Florentian. He leaves the decision entirely in her hands because he wants to respect her, going so far as to say that he wants to avoid the mistakes that his own father made when Carsten failed to give Elvira the respect she deserved as his first wife. And even says that if Aurelia feels unhappy living the life of a recluse, that he would happily just have them move to another house so she could socialize more freely among the Veronicans if that is what she wanted. What a good husband. Despite all their challenges, Aurelia does manage to find a place for herself in Ehrenfest and lives safely under the protection of Lamprecht's mother Elvira. Lamprecht and Aurelia have a baby soon after, and she is able to give birth safely during the time when Ehrenfest purged all of its Arensback spies and Veronican troublemakers. After the events of the last couple of volumes, we see that Wilfrid is no longer said to be the future of Ehrenfest. That means that Wilfrid's future, as well as the future of his retainers, is at the moment uncertain. But when it comes to his personal and married life, Lamprecht is a very lucky fellow indeed. Finishing up the Linkbergs, we turn at last to the youngest of Elvira's three sons, Cornelius. Cornelius and his fiancée Leonor are a fan-favorite couple because not only did we get to see the progression of their relationship in great, and I do mean great detail, but they also seem to be really well matched. Both of them are of the Lazygang faction, both of them are apprentice archknights at the Royal Academy, and both of them serve as Rosamine's retainers. It's no difficulty to see why Cornelius picked Leonor to be his first wife. After all, she is very serious when it comes to her duties. She's almost a scholar in her own right, poring over all of the books she could find in the library pertaining to her major, so that she rose to become quite a gifted general.
She's very smart. She knows how to deal with enemies. She is book smart. She's good at, has a good capacity of fighting. I don't see a flaw in her. So good job, Cornelius, at snapping her that one up.
One of the things I really like about this one is the story where she talks about how Cornelius basically proposed to her. One day, she's just like embroidering her little handkerchief because in this world, women have to show off their embroidery skills so that one day a man will want her to embroider his cape. This is very important. It's very important. So Cornelius was like, "Hey girl, what you doing?" And she's like, "Oh, I'm just here practicing my embroidery." He said, "Your talents won't go to waste if you practice them for me or put them to use on me or on my cape or something like that."
That was so smooth.
Some smooth line. but you guys, it was too smooth. It was too smooth because for like a split second,
it was so smooth it turned her brain smooth.
Yeah, it was so smooth that my Wi-Fi decided that it was gonna die.
Now, long before Cornelius asked Leonor to embroider his cape, Leonor already had a thing for him, but she had very little hope because she believed that Angelica and Cornelius would be matched together. Rosamund, however, encourages her, telling her to make Lady Elvira an example, and Leonor takes that advice to heart. The funny thing about this ship is that they did everything they could to keep the relationship a secret until the last possible moment, though it was fun to see Rosamund secretly ship them.
He tries to keep his relationship a secret from his mother so it doesn't end up in one of her books.
He didn't want him and Leonor to have preferential treatment and be placed together all the time, because we all know Rosamund deep inside is a shipper. She would have pushed them together no matter what. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not a joke. Like, she would have been like, no, yes.
Finally, I feel that it is through this couple that we learn what is considered normal courtship behavior in the Bookworm world, where we see what ordinary noble teens get up to in the Royal Academy, and the significance behind things like gifting another person face-stone jewelry, like the one Ferdinand gave Rosamund, riding on a high beast with another person, physical proximity, namely, holding hands, and also covering a person with their cape. We get to learn about these behaviors as we follow Cornelius's courtship of Leonor, especially in the short story when he takes her to the famed gazebo of the goddess of time and, for some alone time. Also, thanks to Leonor, we learn about the great significance behind name swearing and how at its core it is the ultimate act of love and devotion between people, and in some cases, couples as well. We love this ship. Even if Cornelius is a terrible hypocrite later on when he tries to keep a certain couple apart because of their improper proximity, like, hello, my dude, you don't have a leg to stand on. All of us saw you and Leonor at the gazebo of the goddess of time. Moving on to Rosamund's adoptive family are Sylvester and Florencia. As the archducal couple of Ehrenfest, Sylvester and Florencia have an unenviable task of managing the duchy and its squabbling nobles, avoiding getting taken advantage of by greater duchies, including, ironically enough, their older siblings who rule next-door Frembeltag, and navigating the treacherous waters that are Jürgen Schmidt politics. But not only that, they also have to deal with all sorts of problems closer to home, including wrangling the book gremlin. Sylvester often acts impulsively. He is a relentless teaser, but he can get serious in a heartbeat when needed. In contrast to her husband, however, Florencia has a cool head and a firm attitude. She's a strict, no-nonsense mother and is one of the few people that can actually control her wild husband and her unruly son, Wilfried.
Also, let's all remind ourselves, Florencia is older than Sylvester. So basically, Sylvester tried everything to seduce her. He is a ladies' man, and he went after her for a long time.
Sylvester is a himbo.
Sorry. Even after his mother told him that it was not a good idea. And he said, no, I am going to marry her. So now they are married, and Sylvester and Florencia love each other very much.
Sylvester says that he will have no other wife except Florencia. Huh.
Yep, and then here we go with Brunhild.
Later.
I just love how it ended up where like two different archducal couples are just like older siblings and younger siblings. And I love like the older couple's reaction to just like Sylvester having another child. It's like Sylvester's sister is just like, are you f***ing kidding me, you irresponsible piece of and the other, and it's like the husband was like, you know what, I like you for giving my sister special treatment.
In one respect, Sylvester and Florencia are very blessed and they are very compatible because they have had several children, and also Sylvester has also the blessing of 𝙏𝙗𝙖𝙣𝙠, who happens to be the god of nighttime vigorous activities. So
Despite their family being relatively small by archducal standards, their married life is still rife with some challenges.
Sylvester's and Florencia's relationship did go through a bit of a strain, though. After Wilfrid was born, Veronica tried to take over. Florencia wanted to take back that control, but could not, until Veronica was put in the ivory tower.
just like commoners have to keep it real, like you can't just fall in love and hope that everything works for the best. Sylvester wanted to be close to Florencia and marry nobody else, but as an archduke, he has to have a large archducal family. He cannot afford to have the luxury of being monogamous.
It just reminds me of this one like comment I read where someone said like the higher in status you are, like the less reasonable it is to just like follow your love life. And it's like both Sylvester and Anastasius are both looked at as extreme weirdos for actually breaking that norm. Sylvester was extremely uncomfortable with like the Brunhild stuff, but I guess that's later.
Well, I guess later is now. After the Purge in Part 5, the political landscape in Ehrenfest became tumultuous, to say the least. Seeking to control the Lazygangs, who were advocating for Rosamund to become 𝙏𝙏𝙆, among other things, Brunhild, a Lazygang girl and one of Rosamund's retainers, proposed marriage to Sylvester. Brunhild is popular, beautiful, trendy, and incredibly good at socializing, especially socializing with the upper-ranked duchies and even the royals. Her goal is, and always was, to spread the newest trends. Initially hesitant, Sylvester realized that he couldn't afford to stay married to only Florencia in the current state of Ehrenfest. He needed additional support, and having a second wife who could influence the Lazygang faction proved advantageous. Despite their significant age difference, with Brunhild not yet of age when she proposed, and initial resistance from Rosamund, the arrangement eventually worked out. And actually, Brunhild's youth played in their favor. As Florencia was pregnant, Sylvester couldn't take on another wife earlier than 2 years without risking complications for the child. Between finishing school, graduating, and the customary one-year engagement period, Brunhild wouldn't be able to marry him in 2 years anyway. However, with an official engagement, she could immediately begin addressing duchy politics and wrangling those pesky Lazygang elders. As fans, we love the scene where Rosamund quite literally has a panic attack when she witnesses Brunhild's proposal. But in time, Rosamund comes to accept it, since Brunhild assures her that the marriage would be advantageous for both of them. Additionally, the fact that Sylvester remains devoted to Florencia is not a problem to Brunhild. After all, romance was never part of the equation for her. She's a very practical young woman, and she pledges to support Florencia as much as possible. For their part, Florencia and her daughter Charlotte welcome Brunhild with open arms. As to Wilfrid, however, he remained staunchly opposed to the engagement. But I mean, what can you expect? He was always a knucklehead. In the previous video, I touched upon some of the many reasons why Rosamund and Wilfrid just didn't work. Despite Wilfrid being the Archduke's son and Rosamund being a commoner, he proved inferior in both nature and upbringing. Even after improving his behavior somewhat by the time he reached the Royal Academy, Rosamund remained the trendsetter. She consistently excelled in class and wielded significantly more political influence in both Ehrenfest and Jürgen Schmidt politics. Despite these dynamics, Rosamund willingly entered into the engagement to support her duchy and avoid being taken by another major duchy. Yet it's infuriating for Bookworm fans that Wilfrid has the audacity to want to end it and even throws a tantrum when he can't have it his way. Backless stool indeed. We've spent a lot, and I do mean a lot of time hating on Wilfrid in this channel. But when it comes down to it, Wilfrid was a good-natured child at heart. Emphasis on the child part, of course. And while he had some significant character flaws, please read the future stepmommy's rant on Wilfrid's many shortcomings in Part 5, Volume 3, his tendency to blindly trust the wrong people and a general lack of backbone led him too susceptible to manipulation. Gabe Cumbridger even pegged him as the type who would fail to stand strong against top-ranking duchies because he was a slave to his retainers' opinions.
It's never gonna work out. They're siblings at heart, and they know it. And especially the fact that Wilfrid now realizes what being in a romantic relationship entails, and Rosamund doesn't.
In this world, mana sensing means that you get practical experience at that age. So by the time he develops his mana sensing, Rosamund's still a little kid, and he's had this education. There's absolutely no way he could think about doing that or being a couple with Rosamund when they're just at such different levels. But ironically though, Rosamund is older than Wilfrid, and she said herself that she would never see him as anything but a kid. Weird.
It's ironic.
I know.
It's perfect.
I love it.
Yeah, I think Sylvester, when he first proposed it to Wilfrid, he said it was purely to keep Rosamund in Ehrenfest. When they discussed it at first, Wilfrid said, "So if I don't want this, what's going to happen?" And Sylvester just I guess I'll take her.
He didn't force it on Wilfrid. Wilfrid was like, okay, it's part of the duty that I must do. But we later do learn that Wilfrid wanted out. He wanted out of that relationship so badly. He turned against Rosamund, became an ingrate little jerk. So
he wanted out a while, not even a year after it happened.
While this relationship was doomed, the actual fallout was a mess of misunderstandings only seen in tragic comedies. And things just went downhill from there. Wilfrid not only harbored strong resentment towards Rosamund for not helping him manage the pesky lazy gangs or showing concern as his fiancée, but he also suspected her of aiming for the ops seat, even though she had repeatedly said she didn't want it. In addition to that, he developed a strong inferiority complex in comparison to Ferdinand, and grew to hate and resent the familiar bond that Rosamund and Ferdinand shared even after Ferdinand left for Arensback, a bond constantly brought to his attention by the charms and the sparkling hair ornament that Ferdinand had given her, and which she wore every single day.
Wilfrid feels like he can never surpass Ferdinand because of all of the things he put on her.
But by that time, it was too late to back out of the engagement, and all he could do was stew in his frustration while Rosamund remained blissfully ignorant of all of this. To add insult to his injured pride, around this time, Rosamund saw fit to send him daily ordinances to remind him to work, to eat, and to rest, just as she used to do for Ferdinand, in a hilarious attempt to, quote-unquote, be kinder and show more concern for her fiancé.
At the end of the day, we can all agree that this ship was as rocky as the Titanic door.
Yeah.
And so, while it was unfortunate that Rosamund had to leave Ehrenfest, there was a measure of mutual relief when their engagement ended. After all, Rosamund never saw Wilfrid in a romantic light, and Wilfrid stated that while being engaged to her was painful, he still cared for her as his sister. Well, that's nice, I guess, but even as a sister, you could have treated her better. Charlotte certainly would have, had she been in your shoes. You can bet that I have lots to say about this particular ship, but as this video is already getting too long, I will cover in the next ship's video. But don't worry, I won't keep you waiting too long for it, as I'm more than halfway done with the editing. For now, please let me know what you think about the couples I covered, which are your favorite, and which are the Ehrenfest couples you think I should cover in the next video. As always, thank you to my supporters, both one-time donors and monthly members who make these videos possible. check out the links in my description if you'd like to get yourself some merch as well. I'm especially fond of the Elvira mugs and t-shirts that I have on my spring store. Alright you guys, I'll see you next time. Until then, keep shipping!